Good morning, Harris Creek. I hope you guys had an amazing 4th of July, a great Independence Day. It's so fun for me to be back in here with you. Did you guys go and do anything fun? You get on some water or see something? We went to the lake. We were out at Lake Whitney, and it was really windy. My in-laws have a house out there and have generously and graciously allowed us to use it. They also have a boat that they allowed us use of. That's the best kind of boat, okay, is a friend's boat, you know. And so we're out there on the boat, and all of our kids are on the boat, and it's past lunchtime, and we brought some snacks, but we didn't bring lunch, and we're trying to think through, okay, what are we gonna do for lunch? And I'm hungry. I'm moving from hungry to hangry, and as I'm thinking through that, I see this sign on the side of the lake. It says, "We're open." And I had heard rumors that there's a new grill on the lake over there, and I see this sign, "We're open," and there's this dock, and so I'm like, hey, let's go check out that grill. And so we pull the boat up and tie it up, and I just said, hey, y'all stay here, I'll run up here, and I'll get us some food. And so I go up this long flight of stairs and walk in. It's a smaller grill, but there's, you know, it's like 6 tables, and one of them has people sitting at it, and I go up and I ask the girl, like, hey, what do you recommend? I'm excited about this. You know, they have seafood and all kinds of different offerings. I'm like, what do you recommend? And she said, well, I really like the grilled cheese. And I was like, you and I might have different palates, okay? I'm concerned already that that's what you're leading with, is the grilled cheese. But I look at the menu, I get a shrimp po' boy and some other things, you know, for the kids. And then I place my order and I wait. And I'm in there and I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I'm waiting. And Monica calls and checks on me from the boat. She's like, hey, you know, we're just tied up, just sitting here. The kids are a little restless. I know, I'm hurrying. I'm waiting. And some people come in and they order and they sit down. And I see that they get their food. So I kind of like, you know, I'm lingering there around the cash register, like looking in the kitchen, like make sure they're doing stuff back there. And then that people, they leave. Like they came, got their food, ate and left. And then some more people came. Then they got their food. So now I'm like, oh, you know, hey, I don't want to be rude, but is our food coming? Like and she said, oh yeah, you're next. You're next. Told me, looked at me and you're next. And so, okay, I waited so long. Now 30 minutes have gone by. And so I'm sitting there in this little grill and somebody else comes and they place their order. And they got their food, which means I wasn't next. And so I go back up, and now it's been 45 minutes, okay? And I'm texting them on the boat. I'm like, hey, I'm trying to, like, should I abandon mission? Like, what, you know, this is tough. And so I go back up, and she comes out with some food, and I think she's gonna hand it to me. She's like, did you get the patty melt? I'm like, no, I didn't get the patty melt. And she goes, well, what did you order? And I begin to tell her again, and she looks down, and there's my ticket still sitting by the cash register, hadn't gone back, like nobody's done anything with it. And so she looks at that, and she looks at me and doesn't say anything. I'm sure she's embarrassed, and she just gets it, and she just takes it to the back. And I'm like, okay, at least now I know, right? But then she comes back, and it's just kind of like everything's normal. And I'm at this weird fork in the road emotionally, you know, because I'm like, okay, I feel my flesh like bubbling up, like I'm the teacher in me, okay? The instructor in me wants to make this a corporate training lesson, you know, on customer service. Like I'm ready, and I feel it bubbling up, and I'm just thinking, and what you start justifying, you know, and I'm thinking, okay, I can, like, this is completely okay within the realms to unleash wrath on this young woman. And by the grace of God, I go to pray. I'm like, Lord, what would you have me do here? You know, and I, literally in the middle of the service, I'm, Lord, what would you have me do? And I look up, and there's this sign, and it just says, well, I took a picture of it, yeah. It says, I'm sorry for what I said when I was hungry. And then on the bottom there, real small, it's got a Bible verse, you know, as if the Lord just wanted to put a little bit more conviction on that. And I thought, you know what? I'm not going to get to say that. I'm not going to have to say that. I can wait. I've waited 45 minutes. I can wait another 5. And everything's going to be okay. But we came in here this morning, and some of us, that's really what we need to say. I'm sorry for what I said when we were running late. I'm sorry for what I said when I was impatient. I'm sorry for what I said when you didn't meet my expectations. I'm sorry for what I said when I was disappointed. I'm sorry for what I said when I didn't feel well. I'm sorry for what I said when you frustrated me. I'm sorry for what I said when you were not kind to your sister. I'm sorry for what I said when... You can insert your little sentence there and finish the phrase. But so much of what we need to apologize for is what comes out of our mouth, which is why James, the Holy Spirit through James, wrote this section of the book we're going to be in today, James chapter 3, known as the Proverbs of the New Testament. It says in Proverbs 29, verse 11, "Fools give full vent to their rage, but the wise bring calm in the end." And you think about, what are the sins of the tongue? What are the sins of our words? We could come up with a list together corporately. We might come up with lying. Lying would be a sin of the tongue. Flattery, boasting out of our pride, gossiping, talking about someone who's not present, cursing, profanity, using God's name in vain, blaspheming. And for some of us, these are just normal parts of our lives. For some of us, these are strategies we use in leadership. Others of us, strategies we use in parenting, things that we have just embraced as completely normative. And this is one of those things that I think as the church, followers of Jesus, we're going to have to give some answering for. Like, this is going to be, it's like, oh, is that what you meant? Is that what you meant? So we're moving through the book of James verse by verse, and we're in James chapter 3. Last week we talked about how faith works. You can always catch up through the Harris Creek app. This week we're talking about how words matter. How words matter. 20% of our lives is spent talking, saying things. On average, that's the average. That's 1/5 of our life is spent with our mouths open and words coming out. If we were to put that in writing, every day would fill 50 pages. A year would be 132 books with 200 pages each. And if I was to go to that library of books in your life and pull one of those and begin to read it to the congregation, my hunch is there'd be some red-faced moments. Some parts of that book that we would be embarrassed by, because this is one of those things, like I said, I think we just haven't taken to heart. We don't take God at his word. When he says things like Ephesians 4:29, listen, "Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for building others up so that it may benefit those who listen." Listen what's in that verse. Listen. Do not let any, but only. It's very, very clear. It's not confusing. Do not let any. What unwholesome talk can I come out? Not any. So what can I say? Only what is helpful for building others up so that it may benefit those who listen. If just us, the ones in this room, left through those doors in just a few moments, and we simply lived that verse, the world would change. Your life would be better. You'd experience more joy. You'd move closer to the Father's heart. You'd be a better employee, a better employer, a better husband, a better wife, better father, better mother. The benefits of us simply living out that verse, God would be glorified and your life would be changed and people would notice. And so as we move through James chapter 3, we're going to look at how the power of the tongue takes you places, how the problem is our tongue is poisoned, and the product of our tongue proves the object of our praise. When I say tongue, just hear words, speech, things you say. I'm going to start verse 1, James chapter 3. Not many of you should become teachers, my fellow believers, because you know that we who teach will be judged more strictly. James, before he's going to give you instruction, he addresses himself. James is a teacher. We see that very clearly in his letter because he speaks in illustrations. Like, I don't have to get super creative in teaching this book. A lot of the creativity is already baked in with the illustrations. And I've been teaching the Bible for 12 years now, 10 years publicly like this, and lots of young adults will come up and be like, hey, I want to be in ministry. And what they really mean is, I want to speak in front of lots of people. And James is saying, hey, not a lot of you should do that, because you're going to incur a stricter judgment, both from God, okay, because God's going to hold you to a higher standard because you're expounding on his word, but also from people. Anything that you say through this microphone at any given time, 5% of people hate it, okay? You set yourself up for tremendous criticism. One time I did the math on simply the time it takes to respond to emails. And if I spent 3 minutes per email, I would spend 9 hours a day doing nothing but emails. Let that sink in. Lots of those simply critiquing things that have been said through this thing. And that's all he's saying. He's saying, hey, when you speak, you set yourself up for tremendous criticism. So not a lot of you should do that. We all stumble in many ways. Anyone who is never at fault in what they say is perfect, able to keep their whole body in check, which is amazing because this is a huge claim. He says, the test of perfection comes by way of what we say. Words matter. Words matter. When we put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal. And now James moves towards the illustrations. When we were processing moving to Waco, everyone was on board except for one of my kids. They weren't super excited about it. And I just said, hey, we can go horseback riding there. And she said, I'm in. And so the first thing we did when we came to Waco, like literally the first week, is we went horseback riding. And so we're up there, and on this like beast of an animal, we're riding along the bluffs of the Brazos, these huge cliffs, you know. And I'm on this huge animal, and I don't know that it knows it's a lot bigger and stronger than me, because he's just going wherever I direct him, which I'm really grateful for, because if he didn't, we'd fall off a cliff. But if I turn him left, if I just pull on that reins a little bit, he goes left, because there's this thing in his mouth that's directing the whole animal. Or take ships as an example. Although they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants to go. Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boast. Again, with another illustration. So we're on Lake Whitney this past weekend, very windy. If you're on the lake, you know it was very windy. And these guys were putting in a sailboat. And I'm like, I just want to see this, because that boat is about to take off like a kite. It was so windy. So we actually tied up. We docked on the shore there, right beside a pier, right beside a dock. And we're just watching these men put in this sailboat. Now, this is a boat. It has no motor, just a sail, no engine of any kind. And they're trying to get it situated, and I'm watching as one guy's holding on to it for dear life, and that sail is just full. Like, it looks like the boat's just gonna fall over, and he's holding on for dear life. All the other guys are on, and then he jumps on, and it takes off like a speedboat across the lake. I mean, just zooming across the lake. And I'm watching, and there's another boat coming in where people like jump off the bluffs, if you've been to Whitney, and this other boat's coming in, and the sailboat is just speeding for it. I'm like, it's about to crash. But then last minute, it just redirects and moves. I'm like, how did it do that? Oh yeah. And I see the guy on the back. He's directing the entire ship by this tiny little rudder in the back. And when he turns it, the whole thing turns. And in the same way, this thing in our mouths, it takes us places. It opens doors, it closes doors, it hurts people, it crushes people. It creates opportunity. The power of the tongue takes you places. That's my first point. The power of the tongue takes you places. Your words will determine where you end up. Is this true? Think about the most embarrassing moment of your entire life. Your tongue probably got you there or got you out of it. Think about the most trouble you've ever been in. It probably started with, hey, here's a good idea. Here's something we could do. Think about the greatest opportunity you've ever been afforded. Maybe it came by way of an interview, somebody asking you questions and you speaking those answers. Your tongue opens doors and closes doors, creates opportunity. It takes you places. This is absolutely true. Well, consider the first thing that you did when you became a Christian. Hopefully everyone here has done this, and if you haven't, I would invite you to do it today, is you probably said a prayer, God, I repent from my sins. I've done things that have dishonored you, but I acknowledge that you sent your son, Jesus Christ, to pay the price for those sins. He died for those sins. You raised him from the dead. Lord, would you give me your Holy Spirit, and would you direct my life? You said these things. If you're married, the way you got that way is you may have said, will you marry me? Or maybe you simply said, yes. But what you say takes you places. It moves you. This is what James is saying. Words matter. They have the power to steer your life like the rudder of a ship. As we were sitting there on the shore by this dock at Lake Whitney, we were there for a little less than an hour. The kids went to jump off the bluffs, and I was entertained by these guys putting this sailboat in the water. And so Monica and I were just on the boat talking, and then as we were about to leave, some girls who were just sitting on the dock talking said, JP? And I said, yes. And they said, oh, we thought that was you. We heard Monica talking to you, and so, you know, we been to the porch. We live in Fort Worth, and just want to say hi. I was like, hi. And then as we were leaving, Monica, my wife, goes, I wonder what I said. We were there for so long, right beside them. I don't know if you're, well, gosh, what did I say? Somebody was listening to me the whole time. What did I say? And I'm like, probably something really mean to me, but. No, here's the truth about my wife. She doesn't need to worry. She doesn't need to worry. She's consistent. She is who she is all the time. At home, in the living room, here. She's one of the kindest people you'll ever meet. She's not even here today, so I get no points for this. She probably won't even hear this message. But she's one of the kindest people you'll ever meet. I've been married to her for 15 years. I've never heard her say a curse word in 15 years of marriage. She doesn't talk about people behind their backs. If she has something to say, she'll courageously talk to them. That's who she is. And so as she says, I wonder what I said. It's not she's not marked with, gosh, what did I really say? I'm sure it was helpful to others for the purpose of building them up. I'm confident it was nothing unwholesome. Some of you, this is your life. Some of you, you're sitting beside somebody and you're like, man, they're the same way. I'm so encouraged by those of you that are setting the pace for us here at Harris Creek in the way that you use your words to build up, that nothing unwholesome comes out of your mouth. The way that you are displaying the kingdom through your kindness and love and generosity and gratitude through the spoken word. I just want to take a minute and say thank you. James says, consider what a great forest is set on by fire. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. Another illustration. The tongue is also a fire, a world of evil claiming the parts of the body. So another illustration here. So we did fireworks off the bluff there at Lake Whitney, and The bluff's just a cliff. If you haven't been there, there's big cliffs around the lake. And we're popping these fireworks, and my father-in-law says, hey, be careful not to do them down there, because below the bluff, before you get to the water, was a lot of old brush and dry stuff. And so he's like, hey, pop them up here, because if there's a fire up here, we can put it out. If it gets down there, I'm not sure what we're going to do. And so we're popping fireworks, and sure enough, one of them falls off the side of the cliff as we're doing this and begins to emit sparks everywhere. And I'm watching it. It's dark. It's nighttime. And so I'm watching as all of the sparks die except one. One of them is just glowing brightly, and I can see it, even though it's about 40 feet away. I can see it just in the midst of all that brush glowing, and I'm like waiting for it to die out, because if it doesn't, I'm going to hear, and I told you so, from the father-in-law, right? And so I'm watching this thing, waiting for it to die out, because I know he's right. The danger that can cause, right? The tragedy. We've seen the fires in California. We've seen literally the millions of acres that have been destroyed by what? By a spark. By a spark. He says this is what the damage that the tongue can do. It can crush a child one moment. And they're crushed. Their spirits are destroyed because of 1 second of impatience. It can damage a marriage that will take months and months, sometimes years to recover because of one statement made. You could lose your job. You could hurt your witness. You could step into all kinds of harmful situations with just a spoken sentence. The tongue also is a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body, sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell. If Satan can control your tongue, he can control your life. If the enemy can control what you say, he can determine how you feel and where you go and what you do. Words matter that much. I see this among really faithful people in the church that have been faithful their entire life. They've attended, they've served, they've done different positions, they've stood at the doors, and they've been ushers, and they've collected offerings. And as they stay here, and as age takes its toll on their bodies, they become complainers. And I'm not even talking about here, by the way. Like, I haven't been here long enough to see that drastically here. But in church, visiting churches over the past decade, I've seen like a fruit that rots. It can happen when we get stuck in these verbal loops of just disappointment. And we just speak it over. We just complain and cynical. And before you realize it, your heart's turned. And your grandkids are like, what's wrong with Grandpa? Doesn't seem happy. What's wrong with Grandma? What happened? Why do they just seem frustrated all the time? He says all kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and sea creatures are being tamed and have been tamed by mankind, but no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil full of deadly poison. He's just saying, listen, we can train lions and we can tame horses and we can teach dogs to do all kinds of tricks, and yet we struggle to tame our tongue. The problem is our tongue is poisoned. This is my second point. The problem is our tongue is poisoned. What comes naturally to us? Like, you ever notice that you don't have to teach a child to lie? Like, why did you hit your sister? I didn't. Well, yes, you did. I just saw you. No, you didn't. What? You don't have to teach someone. Like, there's no class that anyone has ever gone to. Hey, let me tell you how to gossip, okay? Here's what you do. You make sure they're not there. And then you start to talk about them. Say all the things you want to say that you never have the courage to say to them. You never have to teach somebody that. Those are the things that we do naturally. Your tongue is poisoned. You don't have to teach kids how to do this, but they're always learning. They're learning from us. I think about a moment in my own life a year ago. I was marked by 4th of July. We went, 2 families went to my in-laws' lake house again because of their generosity and gracious to lend it to us. And we were really looking forward to us. And there were, let's see, 4 kids, 5 and under, 2 families, 6 kids altogether, and packed up, loaded up, had all the groceries. We drive out there to Lake Whitney, and get there, find the key, get inside and everything, and we're in the kitchen, and the problem is it's 99 degrees in the kitchen, okay? It's really hot outside, and it's even hotter inside. The AC wasn't working. And so I'm trying to figure out what's going on, and I open up the thing, I don't even know what it's called, the door, and I see all these wires as if I could do anything with that. And I see that it's broken. I'm like, it's broken. And I'm thinking, okay, what are we gonna do? Because we're here, and I'm like calling repair people, and I'm drenched in sweat, and there's one of the kids with us is an infant, and they need to nurse, and I'm trying to figure this whole situation out, and I'm just frustrated, and I'm on the phone, I'm calling different repair people only for them to say, it's July 4th, are you crazy? And I'm in a moment of frustration, I just turned to my friend, I'm like, this place is a dump, which was stupid. And it didn't express the gratitude that I felt. And I said it out of anger and frustration. And the moment passed, I called the in-laws. They said, hey, why don't you go stay at our house in Waco? Y'all can just move. We're not there. We're camping. Y'all just go stay there. Great. So we're driving there, and we're talking through what we need to do when we get there. And Presley goes, Baba! And I'm like, hey, hold on. Presley wants to tell you something. Daddy said your house was a dump. Y'all. I'm like, wait, hold. What do I do? So I panic, and I'm embarrassed, but I go, what? No, I didn't. Hey, we'll call you back. And I'm like, Presley, what? And then I'm mad at her, but I can't be mad at her because then I know, I'm like, oh goodness, what do I do? I'm like, God, what do I do? And so I sat there, I prayed, called him back and said, hey, man, here's the situation. I was frustrated. I shouldn't have said that. It doesn't express the gratitude that I feel and your generosity towards us. You guys have been nothing but kind to us. And in a moment of frustration, I said that. And then on top of it, I lied. Will you please forgive me? To which he was extremely gracious and said, of course, I forgive you, your family. And then I talked to my kids, and I'm like, guys, that was not right. 1, for Daddy to say that in the first place. And 2, I wasn't honest. As you saw, I was embarrassed. And that's what happens when we're embarrassed, is we try to cover it up with a lie. And that's never okay. There's not a situation in all the world where it's okay. The truth is always good enough. Even if it hurts someone, even if it's, causes hard feelings, the truth is always good enough. And I asked their forgiveness, right? But that wasn't something that I needed to learn to do. It was a reaction. It's the natural inclination of my heart when I'm not surrendered to the Spirit. You think about the sins of the tongue. What are the sins of the tongue? Gossip. Why do we do this? This is why I've said here at Harris Creek, I want you to know, I want you to hear me clearly, and I want you to tell all your friends in your life group that aren't here that I'm saying this today. This place, this church, we have a 0 tolerance policy for gossip. 0 tolerance. You say, well, what does that mean? 0 tolerance. Here's what it means. Every single time we hear you say something about somebody that's not present, we're going to ask you to say it to them. And we're going to do something called what I call like the 24-hour rule. This comes from Ephesians 4, before the sun sets. That we would just say, hey, because you said that about them to us and they're not there, we want you to go to them and say it to them, and we'll go with you, but we're going to give you 24 hours and we'll check in 24 hours. And when I say we'll, I mean you guys. Like, this is what we do in our life groups. This is how we hold each other accountable. We don't talk about people. And it's so interesting when I say this that people are like, are you real? Like, really? You don't want us to gossip? No, he doesn't want you to. It couldn't be more clear. He warns you of this. Like, it's so strange that we want that right. Well, gosh. Somebody said, well, I need a safe space. Well, think about what you're saying. You're saying it's not safe to go to another brother or sister in the faith and tell them what you wanted to say about them behind their back? That's not safe? You could say, will you forgive me? Because I said this about you, not to you. And the reason I didn't say it to you is because I was concerned that it would hurt you. And I was concerned that it would affect the way you'd feel about me. And so we don't talk about people. We talk to people. This is what we do. We talk to people. Anyone. There's no wall between our staff and you. Anything you need, you can come at any time and say anything. And we're committed to helping you. If we did that, we would be better. And you think, well, I might hurt them. No, you're hurting them by saying it behind their back. That's what's hurting them. Imagine had I just called my father-in-law, said proactively, man, I can't believe what I just said, out of anger and frustration. Will you please forgive me? That would have been better. And the object is not to just not talk about people, but to talk to people, that would be really normative, that we would go to each other and express any hurt or frustration that we feel all the time when we have it. This is biblical. This will lead to life, joy, happiness, and peace. You do this one thing, and anxiety in your life will diminish, I assure you. The sins of the tongue, we lie. My dad always said, a person capable of lying is capable of anything. And the only way to cover a lie is with another lie. We tear down. We think we're natural critics, and we walk into a place, we find out what's wrong, and we begin to point it out, and we think it's helpful, and we think we have the gift of sarcasm. It's not a spiritual gift. It's not a love language. As I tell my kids all the time, we use our words to build up. That's what our words are for. The words of believers are for build up. When you were a child, you said, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And when you became an adult, you realized how stupid that was. How much of a lie that was. Because words hurt worse than just about anything. The only thing that comes through this gate is the truth. That is helpful for building others up. We did that, this place is better. This place just gets healthier. I mean, today before the sun sets, we get better. Why is our tongue poisoned? Because our heart is poisoned. With the tongue we praise our Lord and our Father, and with it we curse human beings who have been made in God's likeness. Out of the same mouth we praise and curse. My brothers and sisters, this should not be. Can both fresh water and salt water flow from the same spring? My brothers and sisters, can a fig tree bear olives or a grapevine bear figs? Neither can salt springs produce fresh water. The third and final point, the product of our tongue proves the object of our praise. What comes out of our mouth tells us what's inside. The product of our tongue proves the object of our praise, right? Praise and profanity cannot come from the same place, and you can replace profanity with gossip or lying or boasting. But when we praise and we sing songs, then we leave here and we say something slanderous or hurtful or cynical or harmful, it cancels out the praise. The praise is disqualified. It's canceled. It doesn't count. Let me illustrate this by saying 2 years into my marriage, the wheels fell off. I didn't want to be married. She didn't want to be married. It wasn't good. I was in sales. I was manipulative. I would use my words to manipulate people. And she would see that all the time. I would say whatever I needed to say to get the deal done. She saw this for a long time. And so then when I would go to her, I said, I love you. You're so beautiful. Your eyes sparkle like the stars in the sky. The condition of her heart was, I don't trust you. You can say anything, right? You're inconsistent. And also, when you say those kind things about me, you use that same mouth to put me down, to be critical of me, to constantly tell me what I'm not doing right. And so it cancels out. I don't need you to tell me one more time how sparkly my eyes are. I need you to stop tearing me down with your words and start doing what you say and being consistent. And this is what God is saying to us through his word. He's looking for consistency. Jesus says this repeatedly. Don't you see whatever enters the mouth goes into the stomach and then out of the body? But the things that come out of a person's mouth come from the heart, and these defile them. Matthew 12. You brood of vipers, how can you who are evil say anything good? For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. Luke 6. A man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. How do we know if a person is good or evil? What comes out of their mouth? Because what comes out of your mouth displays what's inside your heart. That's the point of this message. It's not to go up here, go out here and clean up your speech. It's to clean up your heart. To go back to Jesus. Jesus, would you give me a new heart? Would you purify my heart? Would you cleanse me? Are you controlling, anxious, untrusting, dishonest, manipulative, given to anger? This is all displayed through our words. Or are you kind, gracious, loving, generous, helpful, patient, and joyful? Everyone wants to be that second list. Ask your life group how you're doing. You ask them proactively. Say, hey, how am I doing with my words? It's a scary question. Ask them, beg them to be honest with you. In summary, the power of the tongue takes you places. The problem is our tongue is poisoned. And the product of our tongue proves our priorities. I was speaking somewhere once and walking across the room, across the street rather, into the auditorium. It was at a large church, and there was a guy briskly walking toward the church, and he didn't look very happy, so I thought I'll try to cheer him up, and I said, hey man, how you doing? How's it going today? Like, let's go high five. And he looks at me and just kept walking. I was like, oh wow, I was kind of taken aback by that. And so I was like, oh, it's gonna be like that, huh? And he turns around and he says, well, he uses the F word paired with the word off. And I was really taken aback because of where we were. And I said, buddy, what are you doing? What's going on? And he said, I'm looking for the hospital. But he managed to say that one sentence, I'm looking for the hospital, with that same word used as a noun, verb, and an adjective, all in there. And I said, well, it's not that way. To which he said, where is it? Again, with lots of expletives. And I've got to be on stage in 30 minutes. And so I look at my wife, I said, hey, I know there's a hospital right around the corner. He just got the address wrong. I said, hey, jump in with me. I'll take you there. And so he gets in the car, and I take him to the emergency room. He gets out, and I say a prayer for him, and then he goes up. I drive back, walk on the stage, give a message, wake up the next day, call the hospital, make sure he's still there. He is, and I go see him. A friend and I, we go see him, go up, and he's like, hey man, sorry about yesterday. His appendix had ruptured. And that's what was going on. And we didn't know that at the time, but his appendix had ruptured. And so what that happens evidently is it just unleashes poison all within your body. And because there was poison inside of him, there was poison coming out of him. See, what came out, it displayed what was inside. And I'm not even talking about his appendix, because as I talked to him, it was clear that he didn't know Christ. And if somebody doesn't know Christ, they should talk like that. That's what they should do. That's their job description. They should say crazy stuff if they don't know Jesus. But anyone who does know Jesus shouldn't. And so the problem is, if you are, you got to go back to, do I know Jesus? Is Jesus at work in my heart? Like, God, what's going on in here? Like, at some point in this journey, my heart's turned from you. It's gotten hardened and cold and bitter, because I love to express my frustration and my cynicism and my anger. Would you show me what's going on in here, God? And so let's just go back to Ephesians 4:29. Do not let any unwholesome talk, but only what is helpful for upbuilding others up. And so here's what I want you to do. See how long you can go. From this moment on, see how long you can make it without saying anything cynical, any cursing, any gossip, not saying anything about anyone who's not present. See how long you can go. Only use your words to build up. And y'all help each other. Like, say, okay, you're out, and just see how long you can make it. And some of you, you'll probably make it off the property. Others of you might make it past lunch. See if you can make it till next week. I'm going to ask you. I'm going to start the message next week by just saying, hey, who went? So please come back. I'm not going to church, and we'll just see who made it an entire week without saying anything cynical, harsh, gossiping, lying, only truths out of the gate. And the application then is, when you don't, to get all by yourself and ask God, why? God, why? Why do I talk this way? Let me pray for you. Father, thank you for your servant James and his word, and what you reveal through your word, your kindness to us with this instruction. Father, thank you for the faithful people here who speak words of life and who build up. Yeah. I pray you'd multiply their kind. I pray we would learn from them. We love you, God. We're so thankful for all that you're doing. And we're thankful for the opportunity to worship you with our tongues, to sing your praise with our tongues. Would you make us consistent? In Jesus' name, amen.